we have why are neurodivergents drawn to fandom, and we have Stephanie and Matt, um, and they will. Oh, as soon as I get my meets in order, there we go. There we go. All right, guys, take it away. I will just disappear myself. You guys
All right, so we're
introduce yourselves.
yeah. You want to go first, there, Stephanie?
Sure. So Matt and I are meeting for the first time virtually. Hello, Matt. Nice to
How you
finally
doing,
see you.
Stephanie? Yeah, likewise.
I'm doing well. I've been having lots of fun with this con this weekend, so it's nice even to be able to connect to people online.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I just want to thank Kanji for putting this on, but also for sponsoring the Canadian Mental Health Organization, because what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about people who are neurodivergent don't necessarily have mental health issues, and people that have mental health issues are not necessarily divergent. But after talking to the psychotherapists that I've been seeing the last year, there are a lot of things that kind of overlap a fun little Venn diagram, which I'm sure we will get people chiming in on if I'm thinking of this topic being correct. So just to introduce myself, my name is Stephanie, aka Bookbell. I just turned 40 last year, and I only got diagnosed in December with both ADHD and autism. So apparently, it is not du jour to refer to someone as high functioning with autism anymore. What people really mean when they say high functioning is probably what you would see as, for example, Elon Musk, someone who's quite intelligent and creative, but maybe can function in society in terms of having a job, having relationships, being able to interact with situations where you might have a little bit of anxiety, but not enough that you would have something debilitating where you couldn't either go out or things like that. For example, I cannot stand crowds. I really only put up with them if it's a theme park or a convention. So that's one thing I make exception to, but there are probably people out there that have not been to a con ever and who, for this kind of outlet, is the perfect environment for them. And that. So I won't go too much into it right now. Matt, I'll let you introduce
Sure.
yourself. And if you want to talk about any experiences you've had in relation to either mental health or any other neurodivergency, I'll let you speak to that. So again, I'm still learning myself. I'm not an expert by all means. And, you know, people have this idea of autism and ADHD of, oh, you're this person from this movie. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the good things that have come out with, you know, shows and movies, and some of them that have kind of reinforced stereotypes for people, and kind of different ways that people have come to grips with how to best use their gifts. Because on my website, they always talk about it being a superpower. So, you know, kind of tied into that superhero thing that a lot of people in fandom like, and kind of how it relates to that. So, Matt, can you tell us a little bit about what you like about fandom, and then if you feel that has anything to do with anything that you've gone through in the past or anything you're experiencing
Right.
presently?
Yeah. So, like in terms of like the title, like neurodivergent, and
Mm-hmm.
why that might make you more attracted to fandom. So I'm not I think I'm like on the edge of neurodivergent, like you had just said. Like I
Mm-hmm.
have schizophrenia, right? And I was diagnosed a long time ago. I was diagnosed, I guess, like 19 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's the reason that I'm attracted to fandom. Can you guys hear me? Is this working? Hopefully it is. Um, anyways, so like my whole thing here is that I was asked to be involved. I'm very passionate about mental health advocacy, and obviously, I love anime as well. My sister is Lindsay. She runs the convention, and I've been at these kanjis since they started, and she really got me into anime. I used to kind of laugh at it a little bit, and then she started showing me Naruto, and it was at a really good fight scene, and I just started getting into it. And so for me, I don't think the reason I like fandom is because I have mental health challenges. I don't know if that's the reason I'm more attracted to it or if I have a superpower that will apply there. But I definitely love a lot of the types of shows and the types of themes that are being shown. You know, it's a lot of times it's you know, someone who's down and out that comes around and wins, right? So it's like a Naruto who's like, you know, picked on by everyone and then becomes this Hokage guy, or it's you know, any of those other types of shows where it's someone, an underdog coming around. Or I see there's a lot of shows that have a happy ending, right? There's a lot that don't, but there's a lot that kind of end well. And you know, for me, I'm always about positivity and looking on things that you know, make me feel a little bit better. And so that's why I love anime, and the storytelling is spectacular as well. Like, you know, whether it's through manga, whether it's through the you know, through the actual animation side of things. So so for me, like, I don't think I'm technically neurodivergent, but I certainly have a different perspective on reality, right? So from that perspective, I get it. And certainly, you know, would love to chat about, you know, your guys' experiences as well with neurodivergency or mental health and how you see it in media. But for me, like, I don't see a lot of paranoid schizophrenics in anime, and maybe I haven't watched enough anime to be able to see it. But we can definitely speak to that as well. But that's a little bit about me. Yeah, I'll give it back to you there, Stephanie.
All right. Well, thanks for giving that other perspective. I love meeting people all the time, no matter, like, I know we always say we don't like the term, you know, labels. And when I say, when my sister first found out about this, she said, "What do you prefer? Am I supposed to say you are autistic or you have autism?" And to me, I don't prefer a certain term over the other, but there are certain people that could say, I am the person, not the condition. And then there are some people that say, no, the condition is inherently part of me. So just to recap that, and there could be people out there that have the same opinions as me, other opinions. They could have family or members or friends that have that. So yeah, you were talking a little bit about characters in anime. I actually got more into anime because I volunteer with Big Brothers and Sisters. So that kind of came about because I grew up as a real loner. You know, I remember a lot when I saw Beauty and the Beast and I was little, and I was like, yeah, it's the kid who just reads books all the time and everybody's singing a song about how she's weird, but then she's going to get a happy ending at the time. So I kind of identified with that when that Disney movie came out. But I just saw, actually, I just saw Belle in the theater with my little sister because my match is really into anime, and they wanted to go see that. So I took them, and I could see a lot of the appeal of, I do prefer traditional animated styles, kind of like what I grew up like Don Bluth or Disney, but I could see, like, with the colors and the very whimsical things. I mean, this movie had a whale with speakers on its back, which I'm like, yeah, let's get going on that. Can we have that in real life? So I have had students, because I'm a teacher for my occupation, and I've had students that respond very, very strongly to certain types of animation, particularly the Disney movies. There's a great movie out there called Life Animated about a boy who has autism, and he learned to communicate through them. So there are a lot of people that are nonverbal, and we have something in autism called scripting, where you go over lines in movies because it's predictable, and it kind of helps you with social situations, kind of, oh, that character does this and this happens. So it's like a predictive element. So I think that's been interesting, kind of seeing different students and how they react. Like, they get very into certain characters. So I've had many students with autism over the years. And that was kind of one reason why I came to figure out that I might be late diagnosed. I also know someone who is late diagnosed, particularly with girls. It's a lot harder. And I noticed that they would gravitate to certain characters, and they're very, very keen on rules. I had a student once, and we were doing an activity, and I tried to relate to him by saying, well, what if Superman did this? And he was all like, nope, 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 nope. You can't have Superman with this. Like, if another teacher were to say, let's have Superman fight Magneto from X-Men, he would be like, nope, nope, that can never happen. They're in two different universes. So the idea of, you know, let's make this happen because it would be a neat idea. Someone might think in their head, oh, that's awesome. But someone who has autism might think, no, this is like a separate universe kind of thing. I remember explaining to someone once why DC and Marvel never meet up in movies, and they said my head hurts. But I could totally see someone who was neurodivergent being very like one path, one way, and thinking about there are some creative ways to do things, but at other times there are rules that have to be followed. And I can understand sometimes when people come up with trailers now and then people get all upset if it's like, no, this person's not supposed to have this color hair, or this person needs to, do this, this, and that. So I can kind of see both ways of that. Obviously, you want to be more accepting of different types of characters, like diversities and that, but I can kind of see a little bit sometimes where the idea comes where they're very adamant about certain things. So
would you say you see the fine details better when they do like a remake, like when they do a remake of like a show or a comic book or things like that? Is that something you'd say you see? Or?
Well, that's the thing about I know a lot of people that actually are both autistic and have ADHD, and I think it's almost like a weird kind of clashing. So the ADHD in it, somebody might say, ooh, that looks kind of interesting. Ooh, what's that over there? And kind of be distracted really fast. But I would say that the autism in someone would be the person that is fixated on the one thing. So I have a friend who also recently got diagnosed as well. It's like, just happens to be two other girls. And one of her things was she was watching, I can't remember where she said she did, she was watching something and she was stuck on the fact that they had some kind of thing in the details, and for the period it didn't exist. So when you see those lists, right, like, oh, Marty McFly Back to the Future is playing this type of a guitar, but that guitar didn't actually come out until 1959 and the movie takes place in 1955. So I can kind of see people fixated on ideas like that. And that's what I deal with all the time with school is, I love all the unique perspectives, but sometimes it's kind of like, okay, so for just this once, we're just going to go, no, we can't, because, and then you kind of have to stop and kind of figure out how to help them and get them into this idea. Like sometimes I've had EAs that work with students, and if they're not nerds like I am, they're like, I don't get it. And I just want to, and I'm like, trust me, I know what he's talking about and I get where he's coming from. We just kind of got to let him run with this. So I find that, knowing a lot about what the students like Nagars or whatnot can, but I don't know if there's people out there in the chat that have children or, have grown up with other people that identify. And I don't have my Twitch on, so I can't see the comments. But I'm just curious to see what people identify with in terms of if there's a particular hero that they know that people are really obsessed with or gravitate towards, or really kind of watched an anime where they saw themselves in a character or a movie, for better or for worse.
Yeah, so I think I saw like one statement. Just my brother describes it as thinking in black and white. He struggles to see the gray area.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, no, I think that's the perfect kind of combination. And I think, yeah, it's kind of a good thing and a bad thing, because when you have people that are described as neurodivergent, it's almost like what I was told by my psychotherapist was, it's almost like you're trying to fit into something and you're kind of being twisted around to do something that you're not supposed to do. So it can be hard for people to identify with that. I've had debates with my sister where, we would go someplace and somebody's talking about a bunch of sports and my eyes glaze over and she said, well, just try to get into it. And I said, well, be honest, if you came into my world and you heard like on and on about this minutiae and Marvel and Star Wars, your eyes would glass over. So it's this idea of what we see as interesting or what we gravitate towards might not be what other people do. And I think there's that idea of when you go to a con, you finally find people that are like, oh yes, this person gets this idea, or this person knows what I'm talking about.
you know, I will say that like cons are super welcoming, right?
Hmm.
Everyone's invited. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter, you know, that's what I've noticed as well. Very, very accepting. You know, everyone's welcome. You know, it's a party for everyone, right? You have your dance, you have like different panels that apply to, you know, different beliefs, all that stuff. Everyone gets applause, right? You make a costume, go up on stage, you're getting cheered, right? So I think that's an amazing aspect where, you know, everyone is
Hmm.
welcome. Do you feel like, um, you know, being neurodivergent, do you think that kind of makes you also, you know, more likely to like anime or fandom? Like, do you think that's an aspect as well?
I think it's got a lot of the stereotypical elements that we see in storytelling tropes. So the idea of the loner who's gone their whole life not feeling like they fit in, and all of a sudden they realize, oh, it's because I'm from another planet, or I have these secret magical abilities. And then I think there's that idea of, oh, it's I was meant to be different because I have a reason for that. Like Rick Riordan, the author of the Percy Jackson books, which I recommend instead of the movie, although I do hear they're doing a Disney Plus series, so fingers crossed it's good. He actually wrote those books for his son. Apparently, his son had a lot of difficulty in school with ADHD and being dyslexic. And his son really kind of struggled, except when it came to the unit they were doing on myths and legends. So he wanted to write these books for his son to kind of show him and other kids out there. By the way, all the kids that tend to be the half gods and half humans, who
Mhm.
have one of each parent, in the books, they tend to have something about them, like many of them do have ADHD. And it's that idea that the ADHD is meant to help them when they're doing combative sports. Not saying that everybody who's great at sports and lousy at school has ADHD, but that's usually something that go hand in hand. And also, he wanted to show his son that you can be really good and interested in one thing, and that can turn out to be something that you can use, maybe not as a career, but as an interest. And he kind of wanted to show his son, you know, when you're dyslexic, it doesn't mean that, you can't read. It just might mean that, you're meant for things
You learn
that maybe
differently.
you have different types of intelligences. There's this idea that, sometimes kids say, oh, you can't read, so you're stupid. I have a kid right now, the same one who is stuck on the Superman. He has terrible times reading in class. But if you were to ask him, I won't say his name for privacy, but I'll say, blank, can you tell me about Napoleon? And he's like an Alexa, just going
It'll
on
go
and
off.
on.
Yeah.
So he obviously gets that through osmosis somehow, whether he's watching a video or listening to something or someone's told him something. So he's got that part of his memory. He's got that focus for that. It's
That's where
just
the
sometimes in
superpower
class I
comes
see
in, eh?
him nodding off. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, he's
Yeah.
going to grow up and hopefully do something where maybe he has this whole idea for a Frankenstein comic book, and he's like, and we have to do this because this is what sells comic books. Like he's on it. So if he can just channel, I often say that sometimes kids with ADHD are like a fire hose. It's like they have so much energy that if you could focus it, it would be so good. It's just most of the time,
Absolutely.
it's like when you don't know how to control it, it just goes everywhere. So it's like if you can get teachers that understand that and get them into situations where they're kind of able to show, what they're good at, then people kind of need to get off this idea, they've been doing for the past 30 years of a smart person is not just someone who gets good
Yeah.
grades or, gets the honors roll in school. There are many, many
Sure.
people. I
Yeah.
mean, I just read Rick Mercer's book. He was terrible at school, but he obviously has an intelligence for comedy and what makes people laugh. So this idea
Well,
we
that's where
have that,
like,
yeah.
yeah, teaching, like, you know,
Hmm.
teaching has changed, right? And the way people learn is
Yeah.
different. Everyone learns a little bit differently. Some people learn better by reading. Some people learn better by listening. Some people learn better by
Hmm.
looking at things, right? Or, you know,
Yeah.
actually doing the activity. And I think a lot of
Hmm.
time is spent on, like, I guess, book smarts, but emotional intelligence, I think, would be a more powerful use of a lot of education, right? Getting people used to the real world of, you know, whatever job they're going to be in. It's not, you know, necessarily going to be book smarts, but being able to deal with people. And that's where, you know, I think, especially with someone with mental health, of, you know, getting them comfortable with their illness, right? And getting them to a
Hmm.
level of being medicated where they can manage it. And that's where I think, if there's more examples in the media of people, with challenges being successful, I think that's great because it's a light for anyone who's struggling, right? And that's where I think anime can be great as far as like being role models that have challenges and achieve great things, right? And I don't know if that made any sense, but like I feel like
no, that totally did. Totally did.
Yeah. I can't hear you, Linz. Looks like you're on mute there.
Okay, can you hear me now? Nope, my mic does not want to
work. But yeah, so like emotional intelligence I think is super key, and especially for like mental health, like schizophrenia, I think getting people acclimated to being comfortable in groups when it's a welcoming environment is really helpful, right? Because what I experience is paranoia, right? So my paranoia is people are talking behind my back and making fun of me and all this stuff, right? And it's always negative stuff, and it's usually not things that are super obvious. You're not seeing the person speak directly to you. It's always someone in the background or in another room or something like that. And so, when you can be in an environment where you're generally welcomed, right? Every single person comes into a con is generally, welcome, come to these different events, come to this showing room and watch a show, come to this dance party where everyone's going to be dancing and stuff like that. That environment is super helpful for getting someone comfortable in groups, right? Where they don't feel like there's, at least from what I've seen, there's not a ton of cliques there. There's not a ton of bullies there. People are generally welcomed and usually can talk to each other and relate to each other. So I think that's a super powerful thing about these events too.
Yeah. And that's what's interesting is I find that people are more willing to listen because it's kind of like, well, if I have this fringe thing that I watch that nobody's ever heard of, then I'm interested in learning about somebody else's fringe thing that they are interested in, because I might find that more interesting. And then, we have topics like we had yesterday about what did you watch in quarantine? Then I'm like writing down a list of, ooh, that sounds good, or something like that. So that idea, I think, is, I find it interesting that people are, not at cons right now. And I'm wondering, to be honest, how people have done, because the first thing I thought is, when we were in lockdown 2 years ago, is, oh my goodness, this might be the first year since, I want to say 2005, that I hadn't been to a con. And so for people that really kind of look to that, because, they get to be with people that are like-minded, or, they've been looking forward to meeting a celebrity. Like, that's one of my big weaknesses, is patience and dealing with change. So when everybody was like, oh, lockdown will last like a few weeks and then we'll be back to normal. And then like when people started saying, ooh, yeah, we're going to have to start canceling these big things, that just blew my mind, because in my head is like, no, you guys said this. And then I don't like unexpected things. I like to know that I have like a next thing on a calendar. I'm like, okay, this thing comes up, this thing comes up. So I'm wondering how people have been doing without, I know for years, we didn't even have the internet to communicate with. People would go to small cons, and it's really only the last 20 years that people have kind of been able to find a lot of people with geeky interests online. But I'm curious as how people were able to cope with that, because I know that was the first thing I thought, was all the big events got canceled. And I know people were like, no sports. And I was like, I want to go to a con and see some cosplay. And when I finally went back in October of last year, like I almost cried walking into Fan Expo. It wasn't the same big con, but just the fact I was like, I'm around people and I see costumes and there are autograph lines in the dealer's room. It's awesome. Starting to feel like things are maybe going back, that we might never have a normal again, but it was like a small kind of respite from whatever we would have been dealing with.
I felt the same way when bars open back up again. So
yeah, no, I don't know if
when bars open, you can actually go in person and there's dance floors.
That was a little bit of a topic yesterday, but yeah.
I was going to say, can you guys read the chat just out of curiosity, or do you want me to read out some of them?
Yeah,
so
I can.
If you could do that, that'd be great.
Rigobat was saying, my other brother used to be criticized in school because he wasn't a strong reader. Going back to your point about struggling in school sometimes. He works as a diesel mechanic now. The education system doesn't properly value different intelligences. And then she also says, it might depend on where you find fandom. Fandom in person is generally very welcome, but fandom on the internet can often be very gatekeepy and mean. And we just said people gravitate towards cons because it's more of a judgment-free zone. That's what I've seen from friends who've never been to one. And we sort of said that, some of the online stuff is a little bit more on the gatekeepy.
Well, there's a lot of trolls, right, that just like go online to be jerks, eh?
I think that the other issue too is that's I think a really big topic. What I found is it's the same old adage of when someone's not in front of your face, how do you treat them when they're someone in person? When you're you got a screen name and it feels like maybe you're playing a game where that feels like a role. And I think sometimes there tends to be a little bit of resentment of where people are upset. Like there are people out there that are like, I was a nerd before it was cool. So that juxtaposition of, the idea that now people know who Marvel characters are. And some people think that it's like, no, we have to protect it because we can't have everybody coming in and liking it because this is my thing.
That was their special thing, right? Yeah. For sure. That's fair.
Which I kind of understand it, but at the same time, I mean, there's no place for certain behavior. And things like chasing people off of Twitter that are actors and parts and stuff like that. But
it's brutal.
Yeah.
Well, this is I think if we get into some content, people can be more involved with like what types of roles they don't like. I know you were talking about that.
Yeah.
How some things are portrayed, and maybe some of your pet peeves about the types of characters. I know you were talking about like Big Bang Theory is an example, and like Sheldon and how that's portrayed. Like, do you feel like that's a good portrayal, or does that bug you, or what are your thoughts on that?
I feel that Sheldon on Big Bang is interesting because they've never come out as far as I've known. So setting aside, I know a lot of people that are like, Big Bang is not funny. The fact that they've never come out straight and either done an episode or they said, yes, this character is on the autism spectrum. I think it's almost veering toward coding, where you've got a character with a lot of traits, but you've never outright said that they are neurodivergent. And I think it's tricky because a lot of the times when I see autism in movies, so first of all, my parents are still kind of hesitant with this diagnosis. To them, they're boomers. Autism is Dustin Hoffman and Rain Man. Walking around, making weird noises. Toothpicks fall on the ground, I can instantly count them, but I'll freak out if there's water or whatever he freaks out about in that movie. So I think it's kind of tricky when they don't say that the person is autistic, because a lot of the times the traits that they go to are either the know-it-all or someone who blurts out things and it's like, he has no social skills.
Yeah, you see that a lot with the what's that called again? Where it's what's it called? But basically, where it's like it's social awkwardness is a thing. It's an aspect of autism.
And
that's exactly what it's called.
And a lot of people pointed out Big Bang kind of plays into that a bit. And you have a lot of stereotypes. I find it's very tricky. Like I was actually watching a thing on disability representation on YouTube yesterday. And it's tricky when you have someone portraying something and they don't identify it as that. The show I really like on Netflix that I think does a good job is called Atypical. And
I've heard of that one.
The actor, the actor has some what I would call nerdy traits. Because the reason why I realized that I might be on the spectrum is I read this book called American Nerd. And one of the chapters is talking about how you can kind of do a diagram where, not everybody is autistic and nerdy, and not everybody who's nerdy is autistic. And they said, your shared characteristics are your social phobias, liking science and engineering, rule-bound speech, sometimes not having good coordination, which might explain the lack of liking or participating in sports, intense focus on a particular subject or set of subjects. So as my fiance lovingly likes to say, he totally accepts this, but he'll joke like, oh, here we go. All the characters from this movie, but you forgot to put milk back in the fridge. So there goes the ADHD and the forgetting. Yeah, I think Atypical does a good job. And they do have actors on that show in the minor roles that are actually autistic. So,
so it's not they're trying to portray it. They actually are straight up.
Yeah, it's not someone like, oh, here comes my Emmy or Oscar moment.
Right. It's not I Am Sam, right? Where,
like, I know there was a big controversy with Sia last year in the music movie. Yeah.
Okay. And it's like
another one like
the Tropic Thunder stuff, right? I'm not going to say it, but
yeah.
R word, right? Like same thing.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Rikubat had a pretty interesting comment here too that I would love to get your perspective on. So she said, my youngest brother has high functioning autism and he really relates to Sheldon. It helped him be more comfortable with himself and interest, not saying it's a good portrayal, but it might still help some people where they can just, be able to relate, right? And see someone being successful with that challenge.
Yeah, and I've heard a lot of people say that, oh, my kid is autistic and they love Drax from Marvel because he's like me. He doesn't get jokes. He doesn't get sarcasm. You kind of have to explain things to him. So again, that's an alien that it's made to be that's part of the alien vibe. I also think I understand why a lot of sci-fi shows have this token Spock character where it's the person that's
very
the smartest,
data-based.
But they go, data, logic. You can go with Tilk from Stargate. That idea that even when they do the Orville, they have I forget what his name is because they all have. It's kind of like a parody, but kind of like a real one, where they always have the person who's devoid of emotion. And I think that's kind of always been the battle is people on the autism spectrum. I'm very highly emotional, and people have this idea that we're robots, and it can actually be the opposite. But the idea is also, the train problem where you have this many people on a track and you can only pull the switch to go one way. And a person who's autistic might likely say, well, this is obvious. You do the one with the least amount of people. But people know that there are complex issues and things like that. Like, I'm wondering if there's going to be a day where robots just be teachers or now and they're just going to have a program. And I'm like, no, because there's so many emotional parts to it.
Right?
Yeah, well, there's so many emotional parts. And I know that's what students said when they came back in September 2020. I said, so is everybody mad? I went to a new school. I said, did you all want to be online? So less work, ha ha ha. And they're like, no, we want to be back. We want to see people in person. Like, seeing people through a computer is not the same. And I imagine if someone were to like make the ultimate teacher and program and things, it'd be very complicated because of that emotion stuff. That is hard,
right?
for
you got to relate to them.
Yeah. Now, I was going to ask you, my sister actually works, or at least in the past, she worked with patients that had schizophrenia in a rec and leisure program. And she said, what I can't stand is when I tell people that, and they'll say, oh, good for you. How many times have you been attacked? Or have you had to deal with someone who's walking around? And she's like,
I mean,
it's not, what people think. And this is extreme thing. It's kind of like autism where it's continuum. It's not one fine set of stuff. So do you find that in the media, I know that kind of comes up. I'm trying to think of a portrayal in a movie that would have tackled schizophrenia.
Yeah, I can give you some examples. Like Psycho, like, right? That's like the biggest one, right? Where like he's himself and his mom, and he's murdering people dressed up as mom, right? Like stuff like that is pretty, hardcore, like schizophrenic. But I mean, it bothers me for sure that there are certain portrayals that I don't think are accurate, and unfortunately there is a lot of stigma with it because there are in some cases violent acts done by people that have mental health challenges or when they were under psychosis and not in the same reality. The scary part about schizophrenia is that when you're having a psychosis, which is like a full-on break from reality, you don't really know what's going on. It's very scary, and but that's not like 99% of the time for someone that has schizophrenia. That's not happening. That's not what your constant is, right? And so unfortunately there is a lot of that, and I'm assuming hopefully like your sister was fine, and like obviously like most kids are manage it pretty darn well. Am I gone?
Oh, no, you're back.
I'm back, but
you just flipped for a second.
It was actually yours. Matt's been going good, so
okay.
Their stuff.
Gotcha.
Oh,
but
okay.
I do have like, it depends how you want to show it, right? Like if you want to do something educational about it, I don't think there's enough that with schizophrenia, because I think, you can use it very well to scare people, right? Like, cause that's where scary movies come into play. They want to, use things that people are already scared of and can relate to, and that they understand, like someone who goes nuts and, goes on a rampage, or like some TV show that portrays it negatively. There's not a lot of positive portrayals of schizophrenia right now, unfortunately. So it'd be great to see something that's a little bit more level, a little bit more accurate to what the actual experience is versus, what it could be. And that's where I can relate to Coffee Shots thing. There is so many feelings about people who are asked to portray others with disabilities or mental health issues that they don't have, right? Because I would hope that they would go and speak to people and like immerse themselves in that type of environment to understand what that's about, or to get some different perspectives of what those illnesses may be, right? So, yeah, I mean, it doesn't bother me that much, because I think it's, good to have thick skin about your illness, in my opinion, right? Or about, if you're on the spectrum of just having thick skin. Some people are going to have, their own opinions about it, and some people may have their own perspectives, but that doesn't affect me, right? Like, some people who are schizophrenic don't like being called schizophrenic. They feel like that's a negative connotation, right? Or, or they prefer to say I have schizophrenia versus to say I'm schizophrenic, because they associate negative things with that word. And in my opinion, I kind of want to take the word back, because it doesn't bother me, right? I don't associate negatives with the word schizophrenic or with schizophrenia in general. So I don't care, what the terminology is, right? As long as they're not using it in a negative connotation, I'm fine with it. And the interesting thing for me is that, generally, most people that find out about it aren't bothered by it at all. Like, most people are very open. They're very, kind about it, really. When I open up about it, the funny, I think we lost Stephanie there, right? Yeah. Okay. So hopefully she can pop back on.
I'll add her back in if she pops back up. I know that she was having some internet issues earlier, so take it away, Matt.
Okay. Yeah. All right. It's the Matt show here. So, yeah. So anyways, I just find that, like, I'm treated worse by like someone like a pharmacist who actually knows what schizophrenia is, than by just a regular individual who doesn't necessarily know all the science behind it, or like what the symptoms could be, or all those things. Because when I go and get my medication prescription filled, and they see the dose is pretty high, they're like, "Wow, what's up with this guy?" Right? He's taking a fairly high dose of antipsychotics. What does that mean? And they have their own perspective of what that might be, right? And versus, someone that doesn't really know what the diagnosis is supposed to be, are generally pretty open to learning about it. At least that's what I found from it. But not sure if anyone has a similar perspective about it. Right. Better media portrayals can help too. Media doesn't generally portray schizophrenia kindly or accurately. Yeah, 100%. Thanks, Riku. Yeah, that's a great point. And the same goes for other mental illnesses too, right? Like, bipolar disorder is sometimes misshown, or depression. I don't know if it's always shown directly. But I know we're talking about neurodivergent here. We got Stephanie back on, right?
Yeah, I connected with the other phone, so we'll see if that works.
Okay.
But no, what I get frustrated by is that if it's too much played for laughs. I mean, I don't disagree. I mean, there are comedians out there that have disabilities that, they kind of put themselves in on the joke, which I think is a little bit different than if, there's a lot of talk, and again, this is a different topic, about LGBTQ plus people. And it's like, oh, you're the funny person who comes in and creates the awkwardness. And we've gotten away from that, thankfully, the last few years. And I think that's for mental health where that might go, where it's like, no, we don't want to have someone with Tourette's in, because the stereotype is that they swear all the time, and haha, wouldn't it be funny if this character came in and they went to a kid's birthday party and then, oh no, swearing, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a really good show as well that I think is on Netflix. That's a dating show where it shows like the dating life of individuals that have autism, which my girlfriend showed me. And I thought that was pretty interesting too, of kind of giving you that real perspective of them going through it. And it didn't seem like, you tell me, I'm not on the spectrum, right? But it seemed like it was a pretty good portrayal. It wasn't there to make fun of them. I think it was just to give perspective, right? That, they're living normal lives still. And, this.
Yeah. And again, with any of these, some people might say, no, I hated it just because of, this, that, or that. But I think they do a pretty good job of being accurate. I mean, there are some times where they don't work out, whether they're dating neurodivergent or neurally atypical people, but they also don't kind of make, I see like they're kind of saying, oh, this is funny as in generally funny, not this is funny because this person is so out there. And the way I see it, it's kind of an interesting show because they deal with things that I've dealt with dating in the past that are awkward. And sometimes I think in the past that I have awkward dating experiences because dating is awkward, or because I kind of have to follow, like I find that sometimes when I'm in social situations, it's like I have a computer program where it's like person says this, then you say this, if they say this, say this. Like on the Big Bang, to bring it back, you know, when Sheldon did his friendship diagram, he's like, this is how you become friends with someone. I'm like, I think that's brilliant because, you know, to me, this is what frustrates me, where there's something in Greek called syllogistic thinking, where if it's A equals B and B equals C, therefore A equals C. A mathematician would see that as logical, but that doesn't always work in real life. If friend A likes friend B and friend B likes friend C, A and C are not automatically friends. So that's kind of how my brain works, where it's like, well, that doesn't make sense. Or when I'm around, it's kind of like, it's almost like my brain wants to make an Amazon recommendation. It's like, hey, you're friends with this person, you'll like this person, or this person likes this activity, I'll bet you'll become great friends. And that this doesn't always work all the time due to people's personalities or backgrounds or whatever like that. So
yeah, absolutely. And Sandra had a comment. I went to college, the guy was schizophrenic. He announced on day one, the whole class was protective of him and would share notes when we noticed he was having trouble focusing. That's awesome. That is really, really cool that that happened. And I think that happens a lot too, when people are open about their challenges, that people are very willing to support them and help them. Right. I think that's amazing. So that's really cool.
Yeah. And, that's why, that's why working with kids I find is interesting. They sometimes don't have the best skills in terms of, they will say weird comments, but they'll kids also be really honest about it. Yeah, but they'll also be really honest, as opposed to sometimes adults can be a little bit like teenagers where, you know, they'll not say anything, but they'll talk behind people's backs. And it's kind of like,
kids
well,
will tell you they'll shoot from the hip, right?
Yeah, like I actually prefer people to tell me straight up, that was rude, or no, that's annoying, because then I know where I stand. It's not a guessing game. So I guess that's something that I've struggled with. And a lot of people that have, you know, these kind of disabilities might have mental health issues because, as my psychotherapist said, people have this idea that people with autism don't want to be social. They just want to do things by themselves. That's not true. It's just when they go and do things, because they don't follow all the rules, they get punished. So someone says, oh, no, you brought up that topic too soon, or you made a joke and it didn't really work. So they would rather stick by themselves because it's safer, or they hang around people that are like them because then they kind of gravitate to something. Like they don't have to worry about going on and on about an anime, because if the other person's equally interested in it, then they're going to be equally okay to talk about it for hours on end.
Yeah. And that's the great part about some of these events, right? Especially if you're, you know, let's say you're on the spectrum or have a mental health thing, and then you can come to an event like this and like you love Star Wars or anime or Lord of the Rings or, you know, any of these things that maybe not everyone knows about, right? You can come here and you can have that conversation and be comfortable having those discussions and, you know, arguing what's the best character, or, you know, there was always a room that talked about Sasuke and Naruto hooking up, right? That was always like a, you know, a big topic of discussion, right? But so things like that, I think, are great to be able to have those conversations with people that relate. Do you find you get anxious? Like, do you have anxiety when you get into big groups? Is that like a component, or?
And again, that depends on the situation. When I was young, like I think I in grade 1 won the award for the quietest in the class. But I think what it was is not feeling confident about what I was talking about. If I'm in a group and I feel confident, I'll be more extroverted. So if I'm around a table of nerds and we're talking about something, I tend to talk more, as opposed to if it's something I don't know about, I kind of hang back, because I still have that thing about a middle school where it's like, you know, I have this thing about where do I sit? And if I sit, it's like, don't talk too much because people are going to think you're weird. But if I'm around nerds, it almost feels like a safe space, so to speak.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah. So like talking in front of, I'm getting married in July and I have to give a speech. Like 5-year-old me doing a speech in front of a group of people, nah. But I've done panels in person. I've done panels online, and I don't really fear it anymore because if it's a topic that I know and I think I can kind of handle a little bit, that I get better at it. I've also done drama over time, so I think a lot of the arts helps. So, you know, people that like doing comics or people that like doing acting, you know, a lot of people have talked about if they have some kind of disability, that's kind of helped them either deal with their creativity or their
Sure.
emotions in a safe space and stuff like that, which is why my sister
Yeah.
does the Rec and Leisure program. She tries to think of programs that are really good for people that, you know, they can get out and have their talents, or maybe try something where they can work with a group of people and see that, oh, okay, if we're going to fail, we're all going to fail together. It doesn't really matter if you're not good at this.
Go ahead, Dylan.
5-minute warning there, guys. So
we're getting the
Sure.
5-minute warning.
You're wrapping it up.
All right, cool. Well, I do have like a point on that. So like, I think that's amazing that your sister's kind of doing those things. You know, especially with those that have schizophrenia. That's where like I started doing sales right when I was still in college, and I found that really helped in terms of just, you know, I was always pretty comfortable like talking and stuff, but putting yourself into a challenging situation where you have to like do cold calls and get rejection, or, you know, into a situation where you have to pitch someone. I was selling knives, right? So pitch someone on buying knives, right? But it was really good practice of like, you know, dealing with rejection and dealing with public speaking and, you know, getting comfortable with people that you don't know, right? Or maybe have different interests or different passions or whatever. But, you know, I think what's it called? Immersion therapy is a big thing these days, right? Of being immersed into something that's uncomfortable, right? Doing stuff, you know, that makes you uncomfortable. Slowly but surely you'll get more comfortable with it, right? And so maybe a starting point is, you know, talking to people at a con and being able to talk about, you know, things that you have similar interests, but maybe that'll start giving you more and more confidence to be able to get out there and talk to people that maybe have different interests, right? And be more comfortable on that side of things. So that's where I think things like this are super powerful when it's super welcoming. You're going to get more comfortable in environments where it's not as welcoming. There's more stress. So like, I
if
really,
I can make a comparison and date myself again. Yeah, if I can make a comparison and date myself again. Sorry if I'm cutting you off.
Oh no, you're good. You're good.
But
no,
oh,
you're
okay.
good.
No, I really like the Blind Melon No Rain video. I think that's what I kind of identified when I was little and I started doing cons.
That's a great video.
The little girl with the bumblebee outfit wandering around town, everyone's like, what are you doing? And then all of a sudden that field with, oh, there's other bumblebees and they're out there and now we're all frolicking together.
We all are built is just different.
There are people like me. So that's what I try to tell parents. I don't have my own homeroom. I kind of go around and do French and music, but I try to tell parents, you know, I know it seems like, you know, sometimes they feel a little frustrated because the reality is sometimes parents want to fix their kids and it's not really something that is ever going to, you can improve on things, but you're never actually going to be like cured. So it's kind of like showing them, well, instead of looking at that, look at what they can do really well. Like there's apparently some guy out there,
Sure.
He goes with his dad and he puts together IKEA stuff because he's amazing at that. So that's something he was able to find that he was able to do. So just kind of trying to find a lot of things in fandom that can encourage people to do things like writing and directing and things like that. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And like, I know we don't have a lot of time left, but I think especially when, you know, people are down and it's, you know, we're in a lockdown or semi-lockdown, I think that's where anime is super powerful, right? Of like, there's lots of things like, Brotherhood as an example, like that series, like you go through it, like the ups and downs and stuff, and then the happy ending. It's just like it's a lot of stuff like that just like, you know, especially when you're feeling down, you can go through it and just kind of get to an ending that's like super, you know, super powerful, right? And you know, there's lots of different shows like that, like My Hero Academia, right? It's always you know, there's some pretty powerful stuff there, people overcoming negatives. So, you know, when you're down, like those are awesome things, right? And yeah. So would love to hear some recommendations on that, by the way. Some great series that are like not, you know, everyone dying at the end, right? Give me some happy ending stuff. I'll check those out, you know. That's I'm a softie that way. But anyways, that's I think we don't have a lot of time here.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Matt and Stephanie, for coming out and chatting today. I think that was an excellent discussion. Yeah,
Yes,
this has been
I had a
awesome.
lot of
I agree,
fun.
Coffee Shot.
This is Hannah, by the way. This is my
Oh.
girlfriend Ashley's niece.
Oh,
Just wanted to say hi to
hello.
everyone here. Want to say hi, Hannah?
Hi. Do you have a kitty on your shirt? Oh,
think she
I love
does.
sequin shirts.
That's my sister Lindsay, and that's Stephanie.
Oh,
All right.
All right. Well,
See you
thank
guys.
you so much,
okay.
guys.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the con, and thanks again for supporting the CMHA. I know I've used them a lot for stuff, so the contributions do help.
Absolutely. It's an amazing cause. Thanks so much. Awesome job there, guys at Kanji, and it was very nice meeting you, Stephanie.
Yes, nice meeting you too. Maybe we'll meet in person one day.
Absolutely. Sounds good.
Take care.
Okay. All right. Bye.
See you guys.